Welcome to Paperweights, the podcast where two self-proclaimed gym rats and shooting enthusiasts delve into the world of literature with a sprinkle of humor. Although their biceps could crush a walnut, don't let that intimidate you. They also have a nerdy side. Mike and Brandon have a voracious appetite for reading, particularly in the fantasy genre, and they want to share their passion with you. So grab your protein shake and your favorite novel and join us for a humorous and insightful journey into the world of books with Paperweights.
Welcome back to another episode of the Paperweights. I'm your host, Brandon.
And I'm Emily.
Welcome back, Emily.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. So you may notice I'm not in my usual office. I am on a trip to visit my grandparents. An extra bonus visit. Don't know how much longer they have to have left, especially my grandfather. But I've had a year since the first incident that led us to believe it was going to be the final end. But luckily that wasn't. And so this is my third bonus visit after that initial visit. So the silver lining is, he's still here. And, it's not really a sad, somber visit right now. Because over the year I've had time to process it. So it's just kind of an acceptance thing and just, taking what life gives you.
Mm-hmm.
So so while I was out here in Dallas area, I just went and did a tour of this place called the Dinosaur Company, and they make like dinosaur animatronics and things. And they have like a gigantic 3D printer that they print some of their dinosaurs with. They don't use it for this thing, but I did see a 3D printed axolotl. And my daughter absolutely loves axolotls.
Oh yeah, Jules is gonna love that.
So I was like, I'll buy it for her. So those are fun little things. So if you are listening or watching, thank you. And thank you to our sponsor, Mudcat Whiskers, based out of Youngsville, Louisiana. And if you want to save yourself some money on some beard products and have it as soft and fluffy looking as mine, it won't really help you grow one as magnificent as mine. But if you're able to grow one like me, or, the few people in the world that can grow a better beard than me, then, go ahead and go over to mudcatwhiskers.com and use code Paperweights. If you're not into beards, then they have candles, and these candles come in every scent that their beard products come in. So should be something for everyone, unless you just are allergic to any kind of scent, and then I am sorry. But I don't even know if I'm allergic to scents. I just deal with allergies as they come. So unfortunately for people with peanut allergies or coconut allergies, you can't just deal with it. But me, I can. So all right, so we're going to jump in. This episode might feel a little rushed. Hopefully it doesn't feel too rushed. But it hopefully I'm kind of on a time schedule, so it should be shorter. If it's not, then just think of it as bonus time. So
there's a lot going on in these chapters, but it is fairly fast paced.
Yes. So we're going to pick up not on chapter 30. We're going to end on chapter 30. We're going to start with chapter 21. And so the tale of the three brothers. Let me get my notes right. I was about to read the Dark Lord Rising notes, which is not the chapter we were on. I think that was actually the first chapter. So this chapter, we get more we get Hermione talking about kids' tales, right? We get she's reading from the tale of Beetle the Bard that explains the three brothers and the Deathly Hallows. Harry is actually the only one of the three that actually believes that it is real. And so yes, Xenophilius is there at the house with them while they're talking about it. Correct?
Yes.
And
He's the one sort of explaining how the tale of the three brothers translates to the Deathly Hallows. So Hermione's like, well, this is just a kid's story. And he's like, no, this is, once you dig a little deeper, this is much more than you believe.
Yeah, Xenophilius is like, a conspiracy theorist. So he refers to the tale of the three brothers, anybody that believes its connection to the Deathly Hallows as being believers, which was kind of funny, right? And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, it has a lot more meaning to the believers if you're a believer.
Yes, and because of where the information is coming from, you do see Hermione's point of view and being like, he might be a little off, he might be a little cuckoo. But there is enough sort of coincidences happening that Harry's like, wait, there's something to this.
Yeah. And is it in this chapter or is it the next chapter where they piece together that and we can talk about these chapters together, since they have a whole lot of information. They piece together that the Peverell brothers are the origination of the tale of the three brothers.
So yeah, this is this chapter, and because Harry's asking, in relation to the Deathly Hallows, does the name Peverell mean anything? And Xenophilius is like, the Peverells are believed to be the first owners of the Deathly Hallows. They are believed to be the three brothers. And so with the Deathly Hallows symbol popping up on Ignotus Peverell's tomb, with it coming up in Dumbledore's thing, with him putting in the Tales of Beetle the Bard, it's just popping up too many things to not be important. And so you sort of find yourself getting a little bit irritated with Hermione in this point, because, and Xenophilius actually pointed it out very well. When he's talking, he's like, Luna said you're clever, but you're not, you can't think outside of the box. So if it's not fact, if it's not written down or she can research it, she has trouble believing it. So we see that a lot in this chapter. She's like, this can't be right. He's just an old coot. And Harry's like, no, sometimes a broken clock is right twice a day. Sometimes he's going to hit on something correct.
Yeah.
But he's telling him this, and he's very nervous. He keeps looking out the window. He's not sure what's going on. And Harry's starting to pick up on this. And so that moves us to him finding out that Xenophilius has alerted the Ministry to
and the whole idea, his whole story of Luna being down at the lake or river fishing was just a whole ploy just to kind of stall and keep them there. So until the Death Eaters arrived. And we find out that the Death Eaters actually took Luna from Hogwarts Express on her way home from Christmas break and is holding her hostage, which is one of their tactics to do, from Voldemort, to where he kidnaps some family members and is like, hey, you're going to do this or your family members are going to be harmed. And I think this is one of the first cases where the kid is the one kidnapped and the adult is the one being forced to. Because I know so technically Malfoy, and I could completely
no,
wrong
Malfoy is definitely being held hostage.
Well, his parents were, right? So well,
you have to remember, so Lucius is fully at large. He got busted out of Azkaban. He's supposed to be in jail. Narcissa, you can kind of tell, doesn't want anything to do with this. And Draco he's very scared, and he's sort of being seen as like the only point of redemption for his father. So he's also very trapped. Not that the author wants us to sympathize with Draco, But it's kind of hard not to. He is just as trapped in this situation as Harry, Ron, and Hermione are.
Right. Yeah. And we see that later on in chapter 23 as well. His hesitation and kind of almost Harry's like feelings of sympathy for Draco. And he even his inner thoughts are, okay, he was a punk at school, but I can tell he's just totally not into this and scared. Uh, but yeah, so anyway, the Death Eaters, they have Luna, and they were forcing Xenophilius to, if he came across Harry, to turn him over.
Yes, and they
So
took
that
Luna because of what Xenophilius was printing in the Quibbler and his support of Harry Potter. So they took Luna and were like, "Hey, you got to stop that, or we're going to hurt your kid."
Right. And so once Harry shows up, he's like, "Oh my God, this is my chance to get my daughter back."
Yes, and we see that apparently he's tried to get Luna back before with just the most random things, and the ministry's kind of fed up with dealing with him, or the ministry is fed up with dealing with him, and so they're like, if you called us about another false alarm, like they're so done with him. And turns out Hermione was right. The ministry officials swarm in, they start firing spells, and the rumpet horn explodes.
Didn't Hermione actually cause that, or did it just accidentally get hit by
No, Hermione causes it, but I think she's kind of hoping that it was seen as a caught in the crossfire kind of thing. But
yes.
So the rumpet horn explodes, there's a ton of rubble everywhere. And they're hoping that they can just hide and get away with it, but they do a hominum revelio and they find that there are 3 people up there. So they're trying to get out. Xenophilius is trying to get to them. The ministry is trying to like do whatever they're doing, and they manage to disapparate just as Xenophilius is getting to them.
And I love Hermione's quick thinking here. And at first, like Harry and Ron were like, "Why did you do that? Like, why show Harry and then hide Ron?" And her thoughts was because she felt for Xenophilius and Luna and said, "Okay, well, if they don't believe that Harry was actually there, then it's going to cause more harm to the Lovegoods than not. So let them see Harry, but also Ron can't be seen because everybody thinks he's got spattergoit or whatever, and he's stuck over at the burrow."
Yes.
And so, and then Ron's like, "Well, what about you and your family?" And she's like, "My family's in Australia, and like nobody knows their name. They're deep double agents. They're secret agents that they don't even know themselves."
So yeah, so they're trying, she's still trying to protect the Weasleys, but she does, after hearing what all is going on with Xenophilius and the Death Eaters in the ministry, she does feel bad. She's like, he's just desperate to save his daughter. He's not trying to hurt us. He's trying to save her. So she does, and I think part of her is a little bit bitter at the quip that Xenophilius gave her, that you're clever, but you're not quite all there yet.
mm-hmm.
But they escape and they make it to, they get out, they get to I think they just are in a field or something.
Yeah, the corner of a field at dusk.
Yes. And they're trying to kind of set up everything, and Harry slips up. Harry slips up and says, Voldemort. Oh no, this is before that. They finally are able to get on to listening Potter Watch.
Yeah. So at the end of the chapter is when he says Voldemort. He's fed up with it. He's like, screw it, I'm saying his name. But yeah, so before that, they do, so they discuss the Deathly Hallows, the Peverell brothers and that they were the ancestors of Marvolo Gaunt. And
One of them supposedly was.
yeah,
So one of them supposedly is the ancestor of Marvolo Gaunt. I don't believe. I believe it was the one with the Elder Wand, just according to how people break things down. Because you start to assume, okay, well, the invisibility cloak gets passed from father to son and father to son, and it keeps going down through that line. So you kind of make the connection that Harry is probably, or the Potters are probably descended from Ignotus Paravel, who had the cloak.
So in this chapter, I did make a note. Harry, they think the Ogden's ring is inside the snitch, and that the ring contains the stone.
Yes.
So it wouldn't have been, and I haven't done as much like research and into any supplemental Harry Potter and Wizarding World information, other than like I saw a couple of the Fantastic Beasts movies, and I played like 24 hours of
Hogwarts Legacy.
Hogwarts Legacy. But I got the feeling that the stone would have been the one that's passed down through the Gaunt family, and like Voldemort would have been the one to inherit that.
Yeah,
Just
true,
because
true.
they mentioned the stone being, they're like, oh, the stone must have been in the ring.
True, true. So yeah, so it might have come down through the Gaunt. So they might have been the one with the stone.
And then the wand to me was more, so it was more
I don't think
accessible, and
yeah, I don't think
anybody with the wand was a target.
Yeah, I don't think the wand didn't pass down to anybody. The cloak definitely did. And I don't necessarily know if the ring was passed down or if it was just sort of a Gaunt family heirloom.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the ring itself was just the Marvelo's ring, and it kind of just symbolized the Gaunt family, and he put the stone, somewhere along the lines he got the stone. I didn't really feel like it was passed down either, but
Yeah, I feel like it was just kind of something either kept in the family, or it could have just been they came upon it. Voldemort may have no relation to the Peverells at all.
right.
Because the only one we know that it says in the Tale of Three Brothers that it gets passed down is the cloak.
Mm-hmm.
So we get that they discuss that Hermione is set, that it is all nonsense, that they don't need to be worrying about these Deathly Hallows. They need to be worrying about the Horcruxes. Harry is just going completely off the rails by thinking about this.
Ron kind of believes Harry, but anytime Hermione speaks up and goes, "What are you talking about?" Ron's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna side with my girlfriend here."
But you can tell that Ron is not having nearly as hard of a time believing it as Hermione is.
Right.
And Harry just feels in his gut, this is where it needs to go. This is what we need to be looking for. And turns out we find out later chapters that he is right. But then Harry and Hermione and Ron, they're all trying to sit around, figure out the password to be able to watch Potter Watch, and Ron finally guesses it. And so they're able to tune in, and they get to hear that, unfortunately, Ted Tonks has been killed. And isn't it that Dean has been, yeah, the Dean was taken and a goblin was taken.
Yes.
And
that was Gornuk, right?
yes.
Gornuk was the goblin that was taken, and Dean Thomas, or was it? No,
Gornuk was the one that was killed.
Gornuk was the one that's killed. Griphook was taken, and
Was taken.
Griphook is the one that brings them into
Gringotts, yeah.
Gringotts later on.
Yes, so they're both taken, and he gets to hear the that Remus is still alive and well. They get to hear that Lee Jordan's still alive and well, and then Ron gets to hear that Fred is alive and well, which is a huge relief to him to be able to sort of get an update on his family.
And they're all using code names.
Yeah.
And it was still funny that she slipped in that the whole joke about Fred and George here, even with their code names. And that Ron was like, I think that's Fred. No, maybe it's George. It's Fred. I think it's Fred. Who cares? But even him, when he came on air, he was like, no, I didn't want to be that. I was this. And then you hear the other one is like, no, I was going to be that one. And it's just like, just keeping the joke running. It's
So they get to finally kind of get an update, and that gives them like a little spot of light in the darkness. And then Harry gets frustrated. And then Harry says his name.
Yeah. So Hagrid does also. We learned that
run.
Hagrid was going to be arrested.
Yes.
But he escaped with his half brother Grawl.
Yes.
So
he escapes, and we eventually find out a little bit more of what's happening to Hagrid. But for now, he has escaped from Hogwarts with Groppy.
So with this is a perfect time for me to talk on this, because I was thinking about this all week after I was reading this, because we spend most of this time in the book knowing exactly what Harry and them are doing, whereas the other characters in the Wizarding world are all like, what is Harry and Hermione and Ron up to? Well, most of them don't even know Ron's out or who's with Harry, right? They're just like, what is Harry doing? They know he's on the run, hiding from Voldemort. Voldemort and the Death Eaters are still trying to find him. So it's almost like
we do know that the Death Eaters know that Hermione's with him, because the snake told Voldemort that it was Harry and a girl, so they assume that Hermione's with them.
Okay, that's true. So it's almost this is dichotomy the right word? No, maybe no. Opposing. We've got these, the experience of the reader is in direct opposition or symmetry reversal of the experience of the rest of the Wizarding world, right? We are very privy to Harry's shenanigans and are oblivious to the Wizarding world shenanigans, other than little bits of information. The Wizarding world is privy to the Wizarding world and little bits of information of Harry. So I thought it would be really cool if Rowling just like at some point wrote a supplemental book that followed along book 7. It probably maybe even like I guess either through the eyes of Luna or Neville or Ginny, like either one of those three would be cool. And just seeing what's happening, like exactly what's happening at Hogwarts, and then getting those glimpses of, oh, Harry. And so whenever we do get to read it, we're like, we get those little glimpses of, oh yeah, okay, Harry's doing this. And then somebody's gonna take those two books and kind of do the piecemeal them together, kind of like Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons in A Song of Ice and Fire, because those take place at the same timeline, but from different characters. And so there's actually like an Excel spreadsheet that gives you the chronological
read to page
order.
61 here and then go to page 20 over here and jump back and forth.
Yeah, so my second read through of A Song of Ice and Fire, so my first read through, I read the books in publishing order. The second read through, when I got to books 4 and 5, I followed along in that chart, and it was like, all right, go to this book, read these chapters, then go to this book and read these chapters. That way you're kind of, but there are people that get tripped up in timelines because they are actually remembering what other timelines or what other storylines and plot lines are actually doing, and paying attention to like details of like what's happening in the world. And they're like, wait, hold on, what's this time jump? Me? I'm just like, I kind of compartmentalize each plot line. And I was like, all right, they're doing this. All right, they're doing this. And then if they ever come in together, I'm like, okay, they're together. Um, so I don't get tripped up. Some people do get tripped up like really bad. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't even notice. Because like I think Wheel of Time, at some points in Wheel of Time, there's some plot lines that are like get weeks ahead of others. And it goes like they go this far in the future, and then the next plot line that it goes to, it's all the way back here in time, and they're like, wait, what's happening? And with me, I'm like, let's go. I love this. I just love it. So, but yeah, so Harry, back to story, or rather, would you read that book if she ever wrote that?
I would, but I mean, you do sort of get from the supplemental stuff, you do find out a little bit of what happened, during that year. But if someone were to write a book that kind of detailed what was happening with the other characters, or even personally for me, I would like the point of view of that year from Snape. Because Snape is sort of seeing everything.
Yeah.
He knows what's happening at Hogwarts. He knows what's happening in the real world. He knows what's happening with the Death Eaters. He knows what's happening at the Ministry. Snape is sort of seeing everything. And while I think Snape is a terrible person, I love Alan Rickman, and Alan Rickman could do no wrong, but Snape is a terrible person. He would be the one to be privy to the most information.
Well, if we're gonna do Snape, I would love to see like the entire 7 years. And so you could do something. So all right, spoiler alert. Just it's not real detailed, but spoiler alert for Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, specifically Mistborn. So if you don't want to know anything about that, stop listening. But it's just a structure. Pick up back later. Don't completely stop listening to the podcast, but for a minute or two, there's a book called A Secret History. And so what it does is there's a character in there, and he goes, we see bits of this character's point of view throughout all three books of the Mistborn series. And it's behind the scenes, and it's like little touches on the world that aren't like obvious when you're reading the book. It's not like, oh, that person came through and did this. It like when you're reading the actual Mistborn books, like you wouldn't have noticed, right? But here it goes like there'd be a chapter where it's like, all right, this scene here, and then it time jumps and goes, here's this scene. If we had some style like that of Snape throughout the 7 years, I could see that being interesting. Or pick up wherever along the lines Snape started communicating with the Death Eaters again, right? So not necessarily books 1 through 3, because I don't think Snape at that time was communicating with the Death Eaters. But I'm not for sure. But
Probably not books 1 through 3 now. Probably not even most of book 4, to be perfectly honest.
Right. I didn't get that feel on book 4 either.
But definitely 5, 6, and 7. But I feel like if we see Snape's point of view, we would see actually a lot more of kind of Dumbledore being the puppet master that he is.
Mm-hmm.
We would see him pulling a lot more of those strings.
People would really start to hate Dumbledore at that point, I think.
And they should. Dumbledore is terrible.
Your team Aberforth then.
I am team Aberforth. I am team
Ariana.
I mean, yeah, I'm team Ariana, which we find out a little bit more about Ariana later, but then finding out about Ariana does make a little bit more Fantastic Beasts make sense. So that is pretty cool little throwback there. But whose team am I actually on in Harry Potter? I don't know. I feel like right for at least the seventh book, I am on team Molly Weasley.
Okay. Yeah.
I am team Molly Weasley on in the seventh book at least. But
So
so back to the story.
yeah. All right. So the Death Eaters pop up outside the tent.
Well, it's not the Death Eaters, it's the Snatchers.
Oh, the Snatchers. Yes.
Snatchers and Greyback.
Yes, the Snatchers and Fenrir Greyback. And so they come in and so
Pretty
he
much
is
threatened to blow the tent up if they don't come out.
right. And so they come out. Harry says, or rather, first Hermione casts a spell to like disfigure Harry's face and
Yeah,
swell it
she
up.
hits him in the face with a stinging jinx.
And so Harry comes out and they're like, "Who are you?" He's like, "Dudley, Vernon Dudley." They're like, "That's not on this list." Ron says he stuns Stan Shunpike, and then they're like, "No."
Hermione claims to be Penelope Clearwater.
Yes, and they're like, so they called Ron out on being Stan because they're like, "No, we know Stan," and he's like, "Well, I'm Barry Weasley." After like I think they punched him in the face, and he's like, he said, "Barney Weasley." They're like, "Oh, okay, you're a Weasley."
Like you're one step above a mudblood, but you're still a wizard.
Right, right. So they don't really want to harm him. They get tied up at that point, at which point they discover that Dean Thomas and Griphook have been captured as well. The Snatchers go investigate the tent. Scabior finds the sword of Gryffindor. And because, excuse me, I don't know if that came through, but that belch just popped out. Thanks to the Daily Prophet issue that was laying in the tent, he recognizes Hermione. And then Harry starts having flashes of Voldemort while all of this is going on.
Yes.
I did not, maybe I highlighted it. What were the flashes back?
Let's see.
I feel like that's important
It is
to
important.
mention anyway.
Yes, let's see.
Also, I will say it's very jarring. Probably the first time I read this book, without actual like breaks or italicized letters or words. It's hard to catch some at first, the swapping back and forth
Yeah.
between his visions, because there's sometimes where it's just like, and then Harry's looking at this, and I'm like, no, Harry was just there. Why is Harry like? And
Yes.
so,
No,
like,
so this one, Harry is seeing Voldemort finding Grindelwald's prison.
okay, yes.
Yes. So, but Harry is trying desperately to block it out. He doesn't, he's like, I can't sink into my mind at this point. This is really a bad time. But he's seeing Voldemort. He hasn't found Grindelwald at this particular second, but he's found the fortress. He's found the prison.
And here the book doesn't state, so Harry at this moment doesn't know who he's looking for.
Yes.
Like he doesn't know he's looking for Grindelwald. Now the reader, unless the reader is not explicitly told either within this chapter, it's later. No,
But you can pretty well assume.
I didn't. And when I got to the end of this chapter, where I think it was the end of this chapter, where, um, or it was the end of the chapter where he killed Grindelwald. And Harry was like, now he knows who Voldemort was after, and it still hadn't said it. It might have been before he killed him, but yeah, I got to the end of the chapter, and Harry thought to himself, "Oh, now he knows who Voldemort was after, hunting after, asking about the wand." And I was like, "Who? Who?"
Yes, but you do get a lot of foreshadowing that he's going to go look for Grindelwald. Like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, he's at this big prison, this fortress. He's probably looking for Grindelwald. He's probably
I
going.
didn't piece that together, so
But so yeah, so we do find out later, at least within this block of chapters, that he is going for Grindelwald. But right now Harry's trying to not pay attention to the Voldemort in his mind. He is trying to stay with what's happening now because he's about to be taken prisoner by a bunch of snatchers, and that's a little bit important.
yeah.
But they're all they're kind of trying to decide. They believe that it's Harry Potter. They can't be 100% sure because his face is all messed up. And Scabior tries to tell Greyback, we'll call Voldemort. You have the thing, right? Like you can call the dark mark, and he's like, no, I don't have
No.
that.
which is very interesting, because as nasty as Greyback is, and he doesn't have Voldemort's the mark on him, the dark mark. It's like
Voldemort would never
he's
give him the dark mark.
right, but he so desperately wants it, right? And so he's like, if I'm the one to bring him Potter, surely he's going to give it to me.
Which he could literally have thrown Harry Potter at his feet, and he would never have received the dark mark because Voldemort views him as a mutt. He is a werewolf. He views him as less than a wizard. He's never going to give him the dark mark. But he's obviously given him just enough hope, which is once again a very Hitler-like tactic of, just enough hope.
To do my bidding.
Yes. Now, granted, Greyback probably would have continued to do his bidding because it was destructive, and that's who Greyback is. But he kind of honed in on that desire and was like, you'll be accepted in the higher ranks if you keep doing what I want you to do.
And so here, I just thought of why I didn't think it was Grindelwald, because every time I read a duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, I just assumed that Grindelwald was killed.
Nope, just defeated.
Yeah. So
well, they say earlier, and when they're talking about the prison that Grindelwald built to put his enemies in, they say that he winds up in that same prison.
Yeah.
So that's how I know, okay, Dumbledore did not kill Grindelwald. And then when you read some of the supplemental stuff, that it has very differences of opinions on with a lot of people, you sort of find out why Dumbledore wouldn't have killed Grindelwald. But so they're deciding to take Harry and Hermione and this distant Weasley cousin that they're just like, you'll go to Malfoy Manor, because they've heard that that's where the headquarters is sort of operating out of. So they're like, we're going to bring him to Malfoy Manor. And we do definitely see that Greyback is not counted as one of the inner circle, because earlier Yaxley and Snape were able to just walk through the gates because of their marks, and Greyback has to pry the bars open to get through.
Yeah, and tell everybody, hey, we have Potter. Let us in. Yes. We have Potter.
Yes.
And so inside there, they're asking Draco, hey, Draco, you went to school with them. Can you identify them? And he's like, he was reluctant to, I don't know. I don't know if that's Potter or not. And then, when somebody was like, well, this is definitely think it was
Hermione.
Hermione, and he's like, this is Hermione. You recognize her, right? He's like, I guess. And so he's just like,
He's very reluctant.
Yeah. And I don't.
It's probably a self-serving reluctance in that he doesn't want Voldemort there. He doesn't want to be involved in any of this. He doesn't want to be involved in the death of Harry, Ron, and Hermione. But he's sort of buying time. Because he's able to be like, well, I can't be sure. His face is all messed up. Everyone's like, well, I mean, that will eventually go down. We can wait a little bit before we call it our to make absolutely sure. So Harry's like realizing that they have a little bit of time until Bellatrix walks in.
Yeah, she comes in and just takes control, and yes. she recognizes the sword, and is like, how did y'all get that? Because it was supposed to be in her vault. In her vault. And so then she takes Hermione upstairs for questioning. And then so we find out Luna and Ollivander are in the basement as well.
And Dean and Griphook, but they're kind of unconscious.
Yes. And so she's basically torturing Hermione while the other Ron and Harry go down or put in the basement with Luna and Ollivander.
Yes.
And then the biggest surprise that I completely forgot about here. Oh, well, one, Dobby showed up, and then at the end of the chapter is killed. And I completely forgot that Dobby was killed. And this chapter is absolutely insane. As far as like bam, bam, pow, boom.
Yes.
And just the craziness that happens in it, right?
Yes. So right now, Hermione's being tortured. Ron's freaking out because Hermione's being tortured. And everyone's trying to say, Ron, you got to stop so that way we can get untied and we can try to help. And he's just not listening. Luna eventually is able to get his Deluminator out of his pocket and give them some light and get them untied. And then Hermione eventually, through the torture, screams that it's the fake sword, it's a fake, it's not real. And they realize that they're going to go get Griphook to verify if it's real or not. So Griphook goes up, or Draco comes down and gets Griphook.
But
and then
Harry tells him before he goes up that he has, he pleads with them that he has to tell him it's a fake.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I feel like, because goblins are seen as very calculative, and they're going to go with whoever they feel is most likely to be the victor in a situation. So obviously Griphook feels telling Bellatrix that it's a fake is the best move to get him out.
Mm-hmm.
So he agrees to go along with that. And Draco brings him up, and then they come down to Pettigrew comes down, and he is no, sorry, that's after. Harry is floundering in his little thing that he keeps around his neck that Hagrid gave him, pulls out the mirror. He sees the bright blue eye, thinking that it's Dumbledore. And he tells them where they are, he pleads for help, and soon enough, there's Dobby. And so Harry tells him to get Luna and Dean and Ollivander out, and they go to Shell Cottage with Bill and Fleur.
And for Dobby to come back.
Yes, and it's like, come back and save the rest of us, but get them out first. And Ollivander is like on death's doorstep right now. He has been captured for over a year. He is in not good shape. And so they hear Dobby disapparate, and Lucius sends Pettigrew to go find out what's going on. And so they hide from Pettigrew, they kind of attack him, and Harry has to kind of count on that little bit of hope that Pettigrew has some remorse left in his body. And he loosens the hand, and then the hand turns on him and kills him.
Now, I think it was hinted at in the book that the hand was jinxed by Voldemort.
It was kind of hinted at that it was at least controlled somehow by Voldemort. Like, he had some sway over it.
Right.
And so him having that flicker of remorse and regret for what he did to Harry's parents caused the hand to turn on him, and it killed him instead.
It
And
kind of reminds me of the jinx that Hermione had put on people
on the
talking.
Dumbledore's army.
Yes.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of that. In Harry mentioned, or in his thoughts, like, oh, Dumbledore was right when he told him that, you know, Pettigrew isn't really in the inner circle of Voldemort anymore, because he knows that Harry is indebted. No, that he's indebted to Harry.
Yes.
And Dumbledore said, evil people don't like it when their lackeys are indebted to their enemies.
Yeah, that does tend to put a damper on things.
And so we saw that remorse come through with Pettigrew, and when he stopped, the hand turned on him and choked him to death.
Yes. And Harry and Ron tried to pry the hand off, but to no avail.
Yeah.
But Pettigrew was always this very cowardly character. And at first you sort of be like, you don't feel sorry for him, but you can understand a little bit how fear and paranoia can make you do things you would never do. But then you get to book 4 and you're just like, nah, he crazy.
Yeah.
Like at first, you can understand how someone that young, because remember, he was younger than Harry, James, than James, Remus, and Sirius. He was a year younger. He was only about 20 years old when Voldemort would have gotten to him. So he was very young. He was very scared. He did horrible, terrible things and turned on his friends. And he's been that cowardly person his entire life.
Yeah.
So he kind of got a cowardly end.
Yeah, I say good riddance. Like,
Yeah.
the actor that played Pettigrew, and I don't remember his name, but he plays Pettigrew so well, because it's such a good character in the show. It's like a good representation of how, like, mousy or ratty, like, icky that Peter Pettigrew is. And
that is the thing, is all of those adults are cast so well that you forget that they're playing the characters almost 2 decades older than they should have been.
Yeah.
Because, like, once again, at that point in Prisoner of Azkaban, when we first see Pettigrew, he would have been 33 years old. He looks every bit of 53.
Yeah. But
Remus
we also know
Sirius also look much older. Like,
but we also know that Pettigrew himself aged a lot more because of the stress and everything.
yes, but also Severus Snape at this point is 36 years old.
Yeah, I never
love
pieced
Alan
all
Rickman.
that together.
I love Alan Rickman. He played Snape amazingly. He did not play a 30-something-year-old Snape. He definitely played a 50-something-year-old Snape.
Yes, he did. Yes.
And it was amazing. But almost all of the adult characters are supposed to be significantly younger than they're played in the movies.
Gotcha. Yeah, I didn't.
But the cast is so amazing, you forget that.
Yeah.
Like, you excuse it.
So back to the books.
Yes.
So we've got after Pettigrew strangles himself, Grip Hook does indeed say that the sword is a fake. Bellatrix at that point decides to call Voldemort. She was very reluctant to, because it's like, all right, well, if we call him and it's a false alarm, then he's going to be really pissed and he's going to take it out on his Death
Well, no,
Eaters.
she knew, she didn't know what, but she knew that Voldemort had something hidden in her vault.
Right. No, she did, but I'm saying before she actually calls him, so like downstairs, nobody, like when they first brought Harry, like Greyback was like, call Voldemort. This is Harry. And everybody's like, I'm not doing that unless I know for sure it's Harry. And there's like
We need 100% without a doubt certainty.
And so like, she Bellatrix is like, all right, yes, we're calling Voldemort. The thing, they know what was in the vault. The sword should have been in there, so he needs to know this, and we have Harry Potter. And so she calls him. At this point, Harry is seeing Voldemort's pool and go, oh, okay, well, Harry's over there. Well, I gotta go. So he's like, oh shit, Voldemort's on his way. He stuns Lucius.
Yes, because they did steal Peter's wand.
Yes, stole Peter's wand, stunned Lucius. Then a chandelier falls down. It falls down onto Hermione and Griphook.
Wait, because Bellatrix is threatening Hermione. Bellatrix, they have taken Bellatrix's wand, and so she is holding Hermione at knife point. And
Correct.
so then they start hearing the rumbling and they see that the chandelier is about to crash down. So Bellatrix saves herself and pushes Hermione pretty much into the chandelier.
And Griphook is caught underneath it as well.
Yes.
So then Ron goes and helps Hermione. Harry takes 3 wands from Draco.
Yes. Including Draco's own. So he's got Draco's wand, Bellatrix's wand, and Peter's wand again, because they had taken Peter's wand from Harry. So they have those 3 wands.
In one of the most fantastic displays of wizarding power, we've got Harry triple casting Stupefy on Fenrir Greyback.
Yep. The only way you could get him down powerful enough, because we see earlier Bellatrix could not fully take him down with one spell.
Right.
So he triple casts and finally takes down or knocks him unconscious enough.
And
then we find Dobby has come back for them. And Bellatrix starts to be like, how dare you do this to your former masters? And Dobby's like, I'ma take them. Bye.
Yeah. I'm a free elf.
Yeah.
Peace.
So he grabs them and
Harry grabs Griphook and Dobby.
Yes.
And then Harry disapparates them to Shell Cottage.
Yes, so they go, but as he's disapparating, he sees a glint of silver come through, and they arrive at Shell Cottage, and Dobby has been fatally wounded by Bellatrix's knife.
Also, Bellatrix calls Dobby a dirty little monkey.
Okay, well, we knew Bellatrix was terrible. We don't insult Dobby in this house. But yeah, so unfortunately, Dobby has died. In my opinion, for this book, one of the top 5 saddest deaths in this book.
I thought it,
there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But Dobby dying and Harry's very because we don't see Harry's reaction to too many of the deaths, unfortunately.
Right.
Or we just get like a couple of lines. But we see how devastated Harry is by Dobby's death.
Yeah, he is. And so in the next chapter, it's Harry begins with he says, I don't want to use magic to dig a grave. He starts hand digging. He's joined by, I think, Ron
Ron and Dean.
and Dean start helping him.
And they don't even ask questions. They just grab a spade and join it. And they're like, this is how we're doing it.
And then Luna, I wrote here, Luna says the most at the funeral.
Yes, she does.
She gives a good eulogy for Dobby.
Luna is a Ravenclaw for a reason. Everyone thinks she's just kind of crazy, but she is very aware of what's happening around her. And she is a very sympathetic and empathetic person. She knows how to build connections, even if she had never fully met Dobby. She was able to build that connection with him and give a very touching eulogy for the little house elf.
Yep, and they put a plaque for let's see here.
Here lies Dobby.
Here lies Dobby, a free elf. Yep. And Harry also briefly he briefly thinks about whose eye he's like trying to figure out whose eyes he saw in the mirror, that, and like, okay, who sent somebody's eyes. He's definitely like, somebody is in that mirror. It's not just my mind playing tricks on me anymore, like it was at the beginning of the book.
Yes, he sort of sees a flash of it.
Yeah, he sees a flash of the blue eye when he's going through his trunk of possessions.
And Harry is also just completely dissociating at this point. He's not really wanting to listen to Ron and Hermione. He's kind of being off by himself. He is just very wanting to be left alone right now. He's feeling very defeated. And they're at Shell Cottage for quite a long time, but very quickly they're saying, oh, we'll move Ollivander and the goblin to another safe house. There's not a lot of room here. And Harry's like, no, I absolutely have to question them immediately. And he goes over to Ollivander and he starts asking Ollivander, pretty much, what did you tell Voldemort? What's going on with our wands? Why was I able to do magic like that, like without knowing that I was doing that magic that night? What do you know of the Elder Wand? Like, he's pretty much, and Ollivander's like, I didn't want to tell him all this information. I didn't mean to. And Harry's like, we're past that. I don't care. Let's go. I understand, but we need to know what Voldemort knows. So Harry's getting all of this information out of Ollivander, and he's sort of piecing together why Voldemort is now trying to hunt down the Elder Wand. Like, he knew he wanted it, but now he's sort of getting the why.
Yeah, and he's still only giving this information to Ron and Hermione. Like, yes. I made a note here because when we got to this chapter, I was like, I forgot exactly how many, I forgot that nobody knows what Harry is trying to do. Like, Ron and Hermione are the only ones. And, he does question.
I'll touch more on that later, but there is someone else that I suspect knows.
And so he also questions Griphook.
Yes.
And Griphook is actually seemingly impressed with Harry's care for non-wizard magical creatures.
Yes, and the fact that he
rescued him.
And he's like, most people would have just left me on the floor.
and the fact that he gave, he buried Dobby and gave him a funeral.
Yes.
And so you kind of get a sense, even if it's a red herring here, like, oh, he likes Harry, so he's going to help him.
He doesn't dislike Harry as much as he dislikes other wizards.
Right. So, we see later on that he kind of saves his own skin getting out of Gringotts, but man runs off with the sword.
Yes, but so at this point, Harry's just sort of asking him like, do you know what's hidden in Bellatrix's vault? Do we like, how would we possibly get in there? Is there a way to get in there? And eventually he asked Griphook if he would help get them into Bellatrix's vault, Bellatrix Lestrange's vault in Great Gods. And Griphook's like, I need to think on that for a minute. So then they come down, they spend a little more time with Bill and Fleur, and Dean and Luna are pretty well recovered, so they're kind of helping out with stuff. But eventually Griphook is like, I'll do it, but I want the sword.
Yeah, you gotta give me that sword. And Bill takes is it in this chapter?
I think it might be the next chapter.
This is that, yeah, okay.
But still it all ties in.
Yeah.
And so first Hermione and Ron are trying to figure out kind of how to get around giving him the sword. Because then at this point they realize this is the only weapon against the Horcruxes that they have.
Yeah, they're like, we can't give this because this is the only way we know how to destroy Horcruxes.
Yes. So they're trying to kind of get around that. And Harry's like, well, I'll just word it to where like he'll get it in some eventuality.
I won't give him a timeline.
Yeah, after he helps us.
Which,
but they very much specifically say after he helps us get into the vault, not get out of the vault.
yeah, so he was so very careful trying to be like, oh, there's no loopholes, and then there was a loophole.
Yes. Griphook never promised to help get them out.
It reminds me of those videos. I don't know if you've ever seen it where there's parents and they tell their children, write instructions for me to do X.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Make a sandwich. And they're like, get bread, put meat or put peanut butter and jelly. And so they're like, oh, get bread. And then they just plop peanut butter and jelly on the counter. And they're like, is that it? They're like, no. And that's actually, it's funny. I just remembered why they did those videos. It's to kind of teach kids about programming, computer programming. It's like, you have to explicitly tell the computer exactly what you want it to do in order to do it. And you can't skip steps. So
yes, but you also do that because like in college, I had to take pretty much a class on how to write a contract and how to read a contract and pretty much how to get what you need out of a contract. And so that was another part of it, is like, you cover all bases. You don't leave things to chance. You don't leave open-ended statements or things that can be left up to interpretation. And they definitely left a big, well, this is my interpretation of that in this. But Griphook eventually agrees to go help them. And actually, they wind up spending a good long time at Shell Cottage while they're recovering. Because they say that this is happening at first, like the Christmas holidays. Like Luna should have been home for the Christmas holidays. And then at some point, Harry says like something about an April day. Like they're there for like 3-4 months. There's another big time jump at this point. Where they're just at Shell Cottage sort of recovering. And then we do get the bit of good news from Lupin.
Yeah. So while they're at Shell Cottage, that time jump, they do we'll get to Lupin's news in a bit. They spend weeks after Griphook decides to help them, they spend weeks planning the heist. And then Ollivander, once he's healthy enough, they send him off to go to Muriel's. And then a little bit of foreshadowing in this chapter, they talk about 2 different tiaras or
yes, they talk about Muriel's tiara.
Yes. And there's one other one they talked about here. Maybe Xenophilius is Xenophilius there?
We do see, so at Xenophilius's house, he was trying to make kind of like a crown type thing. We later find out from Luna that he was trying to sort of recreate the lost diadem.
Right.
getting nowhere close to
Ravenclaws,
it.
yeah.
But he
Which we do find out later on that Auntie Muriel's tiara is probably the lost diadem.
no, it's not.
No?
No, it is made similarly. It is a goblin made object as well, but a tiara and a diadem are different. The same way that a sword and a dagger are different. They're very similar. They have very similar qualities. They are made in a very similar way, but they're two completely different things.
Okay. For some reason, I was connecting them because they kept bringing it up. They even brought it up when they were in the Ravenclaw common room because they
Yes,
were
because
looking at it and
they're very similar objects, but like a tiara is what you see that kind of sits up on the head, and a diadem kind of goes more flat against the forehead.
okay, so like in Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of elves that wear
Very similar.
that.
Those are more like circlets, but
We
more
got another
similar
one going
concept.
on.
Yes, there's a lot of them, but they are different. And like I said, it's in the same way that a sword and a dagger are different. Some would be like, oh, well, a dagger's a mini sword. There's differences and they have their different uses and all of that. But so we do see that Muriel's tiara was goblin made, and Griphook's kind of like salty about it. And Bill warns Harry about making deals with goblins.
Oh yeah.
Hey, you should not do that.
It's funny. I wrote that exactly what you said is the exact note I wrote, which is funny. This Bill warns Harry about making deals with goblins.
But and not knowing that Harry has definitely already made a deal with this goblin. But Harry moves along with the plan, and then we get a knock at the door, and it's Lupin. And everyone's sort of terrified at first. They're like, how did he find us? Who is here? What is going on? And then he reveals that it's Lupin. He comes in the door. And at first you're expecting him to have terrible news because they say he's pale, he's ashen, he's like shaking from the rain. And then he says that Tonks has had the baby. It's a boy. They've named him Ted after Tonks's father. And he asks Harry to be the godfather.
Yes. What was his middle name?
Teddy Remus Lupin. So
okay, yeah,
they named
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah. He just he doesn't even ask Harry to be the godfather.
he kind of just
He's
tells
like,
Harry you're the godfather.
and he's like, oh yeah, you're godfather. He's like, what, me? Huh?
Yes.
So,
But so in that we're sort of seeing parallels for Harry and little Teddy, both babies born in the middle of a war to this friend group, and you're sort of starting to see some parallels in that it's the same friend group 17 years later having another baby in the middle of the war as they're being hunted down by the Death Eaters. It's sort of a history replaying itself moment.
yeah, except Lupin, he didn't have his kids way back then. Like,
no,
he's old enough to be a grandfather at this point, basically.
he is 36.
I mean,
Lupin is 36. Canonically, in the books, he is 36.
Okay.
Maybe 37.
Okay, but still.
But still, he's 36, 37 years old. He is still in prime age to be having his first kid.
Okay.
Like, and when you think about it, Lily and James were very young to be having their first kid. They were like 2021.
Yeah,
In fact, they
I
were
didn't
20.
have
They
a
were
kid.
killed when they were 21. They were 20 years old.
Yeah, I didn't have a kid when I was 21, but I also couldn't imagine having a kid at 37.
Yes, but I couldn't. I mean, I'm 30. I couldn't imagine having a kid at 21 or at 20.
Right. No. And I'm not saying that people, I'm not saying that 37 is too old to have a kid.
Yes, but so you know,
But also,
canonically, Lupin is 36, 37 years old at this point. Tonks is 30. She's significantly younger than him. Like we realize, like if you read some of the supplemental stuff, Tonks is the same age as Charlie Weasley. They went to Hogwarts together. So she's younger than Bill. So she's only about
She's 25.
6 or 7 years older than Harry and Ron and Hermione at this point. And so you do sort of understand why Lupin was a little more hesitant to marry her. He's like, I'm so much older than her. I'm a werewolf. The ministry's after me. There's a lot of buts in this.
Yeah, I think he's more. He's got to be at least 7 years older than Harry, because he was not at Hogwarts when Harry went there his first year. Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie was not there. I think he had just graduated Hogwarts.
He's got to be 7 years, so 24 years old.
Yeah. So Tonks is about 24, maybe 25, depending on the time of year. Lupin's 36, 37. That is a significant age gap.
Yeah. We do learn that Teddy has
he's also a metamorphogus.
Yes, there you go. I was trying to say that because Lupin mentions that his hair color changed at least 3 times already.
Yep. So he's like his hair has already changed. I'm expecting it to be blonde when I get there. Like he's just sort of running the gauntlet of hair colors. But Harry's got a godson and there's a new little baby, and even Ron's like, wow, a baby. Like he's kind of having trouble grasping that concept.
And this is like the first happy news they've had in ages, right?
Yes.
It brings them.
So it is tinged with a little bit of, well, we just found out that Ted Tonks is dead, and Andromeda has been widowed, and they're living with her. So now there's grief and joy all at the same time in the house. And as life generally is, there's usually often joy with grief, and they kind of go hand in hand with death and rebirth. And
the last thing I wanted to mention in this chapter is just some of the things that Griphook was doing is just weirdo. Like, so he says the more Harry realized that he did not much like the goblin, Griphook was unexpectedly bloodthirsty, laughed at the idea of pain in lesser creatures, and seemed to relish the possibility that they might have to hurt other wizards to reach the Lestrange's vault.
Yes, goblins. Once again, if you play more of Hogwarts Legacy, you will see a lot more of the goblins. But yeah, Griphook is he's very bloodthirsty. I wouldn't say he's evil, but he holds a deep grudge against wizards.
Oh yeah.
He's like, y'all are okay-ish because you saved me, but we're not cool.
Yeah.
So then at this point they realize, okay, we've planned, we plotted, we got to move forward and just go for it. And at this point, Bill and Fleur have kind of given up in trying to get what they're doing out of them. They just know that they're plotting something, and they're off to Gringotts. They insist that Bill and Fleur do not be awake when they leave, because Hermione will have to take Polyjuice Potion and turn into Bellatrix before they leave, because they have to disapparate into Diagon Alley as Bellatrix.
Right.
And I find it hilarious that after Hermione walks out as Bellatrix and she's like, she tasted awful.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. So they at Gringotts, let's see, Ron is in a disguise.
Yeah, they kind of gave Ron a disguise. Hermione hates that she's having to use Bellatrix at Swan because she's like, it feels like it's fighting against me. But they run into Travers
Yes.
in Diagon Alley.
And he insists on coming with them.
Yes, and Hermione's able to pull off a convincing enough Bellatrix
After
to
almost
sort of
floundering
fool.
at first. Like
Yeah,
the first interaction she came across with somebody, she was like, "Good morning."
yeah. And
And
Tom
they're
was
like,
like, so, "I'm
"What?
about to die."
What?
Yeah,
What?"
because that was Tom from the Leaky Cauldron, and so Harry's like, "You weren't mean enough. Stop it." And so she pulls herself together enough to play Bellatrix convincingly enough to fool Travers. And they go to Gringotts, and they wind up having to confund a set of wizards to get past, because they were going to wave some probes over them that would have revealed any enchantments on them. And Harry manages to confund them, and they get through. And they're there, they're trying to go up to get to their vaults. And you see the head goblin is kind of pushing back until Harry eventually imperiousses him, which this is one of the first. It's the first time we see Harry actually intently using an unforgivable curse.
Yes. And they start using it all over the place.
Yes, they're like, it's one of those things of cat's out of the bag. We're just going for it at this point. Granted, they're probably using the least terrible of the three curses right now, in that they're using Imperio.
Yeah.
But they're
I could
able
agree
to
with that.
control Travers, and they're able to control the goblin to get him to the vault. And there's another goblin that's running up to to him, is like, "Hey, there's like protocols if Bellatrix comes in here, like we've been warned that her wand is missing. What's going on?" So other goblins are questioning this interaction. So they get down there, and Harry and Hermione are immediately like, they know they're going to call an alarm. Like, they're going to catch us. And they send Travers off to hide somewhere. And we see him like slithering in between like rocks. Like, we're like, he's going to die. He's going to get himself so wedged in there that he's going to die.
I loved when they imperioed him, because like they imperioed the goblin and then they were talking, and then he's like, "Wait, no, that's not." And then all of a sudden, "Oh, yeah, no, that's true."
Yeah. And so Travers goes and hides. We don't see Travers again.
No.
They get down, they keep an Imperio on the head goblin, because he's the one who can drive the cart. So they're getting down there, and then Griphook realizes that they have activated the Thieves' Folly, which is a waterfall that reveals any enchantments and removes any disguises. It pretty much just clears everything. So the cart realizes they have tricked their way down here and dumps them out onto the floor. Granted, the floor is several hundred feet down. So Hermione thinks quickly, she gets a cushioning charm so they're not hurt, and then they hear the dragon.
Now, did the goblins purposely blind the dragon when they put him in here?
I don't think they purposefully blinded the dragon. I think he's just been underground for so long and hasn't seen any light that it's similar, like if you don't use any of your muscles, they atrophy. I think it's like he hasn't seen light in so long, presumably decades, if not, I don't know dragon lifespans off the top of my head, but for decades, if not centuries, he's never seen light. So it's more that because they say he's half blind, and I think it's because he's just been kept down there for so long. But you realize that the goblins have trained this dragon to expect pain whenever it hears the clankers.
Like, 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 like.
So you see this terrible training that they have subjected this dragon to. Because how many goblins does it take to inflict that level of pain on a dragon? And so they manage to get past the dragon. They get to Bellatrix's vault. The still imperious goblin lets them in, and they quickly get in the vault and realize you can't touch anything.
Yeah, oh my god, I forget what movie. I mean, it might have been the Harry Potter movies, but there's in my head just somebody touches something and then it's just like ding 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 ding, ding all over the ground. It might be like what I'm thinking of might be like a spoof of a video game where you go to like you go down and you're venturing and you get all your loot and you just go to the vendor and just like all of a sudden like you just have a backpack and then all of a sudden there's like swords and whole suits of multiple suits of armor and everything that at the feet of at the feet of the vendor is like, where the hell did that come from? But yeah, they touch a goblin, a goblet, and it just burns and multiplies. So
Yes.
it heats up and then it multiplies.
And all of the multiplications are also heating up. So that they talk about they're trying not to move and touch anything else. And of course, at that exact second, Ron touches something. And they're talking that the objects are getting so hot that they're all starting to sweat. Like it's raising the temperature that dramatically. And so Harry's trying to look around. He's trying to see. They know it's a goblet that they're looking for. They have figured out that it's Helga Hufflepuff's cup. So they're looking around for this little cup with a badger on it. And finally, of course, at the very top of the vault, they see it. And Harry's trying to figure out how to get to it without touching things. And they eventually realize that the sword will not trigger the curses. So he's trying to loop it with the sword, but of course he's touching everything and everybody's getting buried under this burning hot metal. And it's
Hermione uses the Levicorpus spell, and
yes.
then as Harry's going up in the air, he accidentally touches suits of armor, and then just like like God, you hit the thing that's like the biggest, and it's just taking up all this space,
But
creating
also,
an oven.
Lestrange is why you got suits of armor in your vault. Like, how valuable are these suits of armor?
I mean, they have all sorts of stuff, right?
Yes.
The Lestranges.
So he eventually is able to hook the cup with the sword and gets back down. He's hearing the other goblins approaching. And he sort of realizes as he's trying to get out of the vault that Griphook grabs the sword. And so Harry has the cup, Griphook has the sword. They escape out, Griphook disappears. And
he takes the sword and runs through the goblins yelling, "Thieves, thieves."
Yes. So he's gone. He's booking it. And Harry has the thought to blast the chains off the dragon, ride the dragon out of there. And so Ron and Hermione start helping the dragon blast through the floors and up the cave. And at this point, Harry's just really hoping, I really hope this dragon does not realize that we are on its back.
He's probably hungry.
Yes, this dragon is probably very hungry, very thirsty. And to him, we are probably very tasty treats.
Yes.
So the dragon makes it out. He busts through Gringotts, gets out. And that's when they realize, we don't have an exit plan from the dragon.
Yeah, they're like, oh God, how do we get off?
And so eventually the dragon, Ron's like, is it me or is the ground getting closer? So they realize that they're getting very close to a lake, like the dragon's belly is brushing the water of this lake. So they're like, okay, this is probably our best chance. So they jump off. And it's a lake, but as they're trying to get through it, they're like, it's just full of like reeds and mud. It's not water that they can swim through very easily.
But luckily they don't have to swim for very long. They find out, they get to a shallow part, and then it's just like trudging through it. Like,
it's not the easiest task getting out of there. And it should be noted they're going the opposite direction of where the dragon is. The dragon has landed on one bank and is drinking water, and they're like, we're going the other way. So they get out of there. They're trying to figure out what to do, but then Harry's scar starts hurting. And we see Voldemort at Gringotts, having killed almost all of the goblins. And he's questioning one, and the goblin's just like, they took a cup, and he starts just literally killing any person that is in front of him. So like Bellatrix and Lucius are running away. Everyone's trying to bolt and get away from him because he doesn't care. He's striking down wizards, goblins, anybody in his path. And Harry's now hearing his inner monologue of, how could they have known? There's no way they could have known. I didn't tell anybody. Who could have found out? And so Voldemort decides that he has to go check on his other Horcruxes. He knows that the diary is destroyed, but he's like, wouldn't I have known if parts of my soul were destroyed? But he didn't feel it when the diary was destroyed. He obviously didn't feel it when the locket was destroyed. And so for all he knows, the cup is destroyed as well. And he's like, I have to go check the cabin. I have to go check the lake. I have to go check. And he's like, the one at Hogwarts is safe. No one can find that one. But he's like, and so he's going to look for the ring. He's going to look for the locket.
And Nagini is no longer going to be sent out on missions by herself.
Yes,
he's going to,
which that does confirm to us that Nagini is also a Horcrux.
Yes, that's the confirmation there.
Yes. So Nagini's a Horcrux. The ring and the locket have already been destroyed. They have the cup, and the diary has also been destroyed. So that's 4 out of 7, which to me, that has never made a ton of sense, because you have the diary, you have the ring, you have the locket, the cup, the diadem, and the snake. So, or what we're assuming it's the diadem. That's what they wind up looking for. So we find out that Voldemort had split his soul into 7 pieces before he died the first time. So before Harry killed him. So the 7th piece would have resided in himself. You split your soul 7 times, theoretically, there's still one part in yourself.
Right.
Voldemort's already used 1. So where did that extra 1 come from? Because theoretically, he had 1 in himself the night he was killed by Harry. Then they pull another 1 out to revive him in book 4. Where did that 1 come from? The numbers don't add up.
Yeah. Yeah, I never really associated it. I don't think the books confirmed that they used a Horcrux in book 4 to bring him back. It was just like some old dark magic.
They don't use a Horcrux, but in order to have brought him back, they would have had to have had a part of him. The only parts remaining were his soul.
But also, so far, and it could be in the last section of this book, but so far, we don't have a confirmation of how many he actually did create. Like, we don't have him stating.
We don't have a concrete number, but we do know from the 6th book that he wanted 7. He was 7 is a very strong number in magic. He wanted 7. So, because if you think about it, so he had the part of his soul that escaped the night that Harry died attached onto Quirrell. Quirrell then dies. That part that we see that soul gets destroyed.
Right.
So that's 1 down. Then you have the book, you have the locket, you have the ring. We have the cup. We have the something of Ravenclaws, they're assuming, and the snake. How did they bring him back a second time in the 4th book? To me, that has always been a big hole.
Well, and then there's, I mean, there is a spoiler about something else, but
Wait, but that's a to me that has always been a plot hole in that she should have counted that one as one of the Horcruxes.
yeah. But so if we do Quirrell, book 4, that's 2.
Well, no, we assume that Quirrell is the one that the part of his soul that got away the night that Harry killed him. So but yeah, that's still 1.
Okay, so that's
Quirrell.
him himself, right?
Yes.
That's Voldemort himself.
Yes.
Is Quirrell. Then we've got
book 4.
Well, we've got the book.
Diary.
We got the diary. Book 4. You already hashed all this out. The ring,
The locket,
the locket,
the cup,
the
something of
diadem,
Ravenclaws. But he's after the
diadem. So there's 8.
Yeah. So to me, that's always been like, I get that she probably thought of the Horcrux concept later, but she should have backtracked and like subtracted 1.
Yeah. I was always thinking, it's like, okay, well, yeah, there's 7 plus Voldemort. So it's like, wait, no, he split it into 7.
Yeah. So it's always been sort of a glaring thing for me. But back to where we're at right now. So Voldemort is realizing that they know about the Horcruxes. They are hunting down the Horcruxes. So Harry's like, we have no time. He's going to go check his old cabin where he was raised. He's going to go check the lake, and then he's going to Hogwarts. We don't have time to recuperate. We don't have time to relax. We have to get to Hogwarts. But they do know that there is going to be some sort of thing that will alert people that they arrive in Hogsmeade. They don't know what, but he hears in Voldemort's thoughts that he would know if he was in Hogsmeade, like he would be alerted.
Right.
So Harry's like, we gotta go. Come on, let's go. And Hermione's like, wait, shouldn't we take a second? And Harry's like, nope, no time. So they apparate to Hogsmeade.
So then we move on to the missing mirror.
Yes, so they see the missing mirror. They arrive in Hogsmeade, and Harry is reminded of the time almost exactly a year prior when he was bringing Dumbledore back here after the whole cave lake incident. And suddenly a horrible screech rings through the air.
Good old caterwaul charm.
Yep, a good old caterwaul charm. And so they're under the cloak, but they like crouch down and hide, and they realize that the Dementors or the Death Eaters now know that they are there. And they know that they have a cloak because they immediately try to summon the cloak, but it doesn't go to them. So they assume, he doesn't have his, they assume he doesn't have his cloak on, which is incorrect. So they're looking around for him a little bit, and eventually they're like, we can't see him, send out the Dementors. And they send out the Dementors to go look for him because Dementors don't see things, they kind of feel things. So eventually they're so surrounded that Harry sends out his Patronus and clears the Dementors and kind of runs. And then they're ushered inside by somebody. And he says, get in, get upstairs, stay under the cloak, hide. They don't know who it is yet. They eventually realize that they're in the Hog's Head Inn and Tavern. And so the tavern owner is arguing with the Death Eaters. He's like, you mean I can't let my cat out after curfew? I'm not going to hold my cat in here. He's just kind of being a stand your ground kind of guy. He's like, I'm gonna let my cat out whenever I want to let my cat out. We saw a stag Patronus. It's a goat.
This is a goat. Does it look like a stag to you?
He's like, I wasn't gonna let the Dementors take my cat. And so they eventually are like, fine, we'll let you off this time, but don't come out after curfew again. And he gets them out of here. Eventually he has to threaten them with, you want to keep moving your product through here or not? Like, what you gonna do? What are you gonna do to me? So then he comes up and he's like, are y'all insane? What are you doing here?
So look, the tavern owner is Aberforth, right?
Yes. Aberforth Dumbledore.
The kids have been there before.
Yes, in book 5.
Aberforth looks similar to Dumbledore. Same eyes, very similar height.
Yes, but if you're
And
not aware that Dumbledore has a brother, and if
they
you're
are.
not looking for it, they
So
might just be like, old wizard.
they know that Dumbledore has a brother.
They didn't in book 5.
Afterwards, um, Dumbledore, when Dumbledore tells Harry about the the prophecy and that he was in the Hog's Head when it happened, and he should have there should have been some type of connection there.
They're kids. No connection happened. Um, because yes, they're not explicitly told. Like at book 5, when they go to the Hog's Head to form Dumbledore's army, they're not thinking that Dumbledore's got a brother. They don't know Dumbledore has siblings. They know nothing about Dumbledore. To them, he spawned at Hogwarts as a headmaster. They know nothing of his backstory.
And I guess
Except for that
Aberforth,
one time he tried a pair of Bertie Bott's ever flavored beans and got a bad one and didn't eat them since.
yeah. So I guess Aberforth doesn't want he did he up until this point, and even at this point, he still does is in a tiff with his brother.
Yes, he's, from what we gather at this point of hearing about what happened with Ariana, Aberforth hasn't talked to Albus since. Not in any familial way, maybe in a professional way, because he does work in Hogsmeade, and obviously Dumbledore is the headmaster of Hogwarts, but they have not spoken in any sort of familial way, we find out. Aberforth holds a lot of disdain for his brother, and pretty much he's sitting there shredding Harry, Ron, and Hermione's arguments as to why they should keep following this mission. He's like, you think you're special? Did he leave you any sort of instructions, or did he just leave you to figure this out on your own? I promise you, it would have been much healthier for you if he had not loved you. You would have probably lived a much healthier life. You wouldn't have been attacked. You're like, if he loved you, he would have told you to run.
Yeah.
So you see this absolute disdain. Like, he acknowledges, he's like, my brother was a very intelligent man, but he was very calculating for his own ends. And how many people has he sacrificed for the greater good? And Ron sort of realizes, you can see Ron's not really arguing back like Hermione is. Hermione's trying to be like, no, he loved Harry, and Harry's like, he did, and Ron's like, And so Harry he's sticking to his guns. He's like, he may not have, this may be for the greater good. If you think I don't know that this could very well end in my death, I've known that for years. I understand, but I have to finish this assignment. I have to do what he left behind for me to do. And so then Aberforth sort of goes into what happened. we finally get the details on how Ariana died, and we get sort of the disdain. We get the history of Aberforth and Albus's relationship and how it fell apart. And we find out that so I'm not exactly sure what they call it in Fantastic Beasts, but Ariana was attacked by the three muggles that her father hunts down and kills. And she's so scared that she refuses to do magic. So it just builds up inside of her and just explodes out whenever she gets angry. And that is essentially what happens to Credence in the Fantastic Beasts series. I don't recall what they call them, but she's it's not that they were trying to hide her or she was a squib. It's that they loved her enough that they were trying to keep her safe. And so Aberforth adored his sister. He could get through to her when their mother couldn't. Albus was off touring the world and going to school, and he wasn't there for most of it. But eventually, Ariana has a spark too bad and kills their mom. So Albus has to come back to assume the head of the family role.
Right.
And that's where sort of Elpheus Doge's story picks up a little bit, but we get Aberforth's side of it, of that he was very neglectful to Ariana. He kind of didn't bother with her, especially once
Grindelwald came up, yeah.
So they form this super fast friendship. They're trying to push it onto Aberforth of, don't you see, once wizards take their rightful place, Ariana won't have to hide. It'll be better for her.
Right. Once we get the Hallows, then we can set wizards as a ruling class, and we won't have to be afraid to hide anybody anymore.
Yes. But that results in a huge argument. Wands come out, spells start flying. Ariana goes into a rage and lets out a burst of power. And in trying to contain it, some spell hits her and kills her.
It's worth noting Grindelwald actually used the Cruciatus curse on Aberforth.
Yes.
So and that plays into Aberforth dislike in alienation towards Albus, because he didn't stand up and go, what to his friend, what are you doing to my brother? What are you doing to my family? Why are you doing that?
Yes.
And so
but
to Aberforth, it was all right, well, his best friend's there. He's choosing his best friend over the family.
Yes.
But
we see that this is very on track for Grindelwald, because Grindelwald was too dark for Durmstrang, a school known to teach and promote
the
dark arts.
Yeah.
So to him, the Cruciatus curse, probably no big deal. But he hits him with that, and at the end of it all, no one can tell what spell or who cast it, but at the end of it all, Ariana is dead.
Why didn't they do the Priori Incantatum?
Because they were all firing spells. It would have just Priori Incantatum would have just shown what spells were cast. It wouldn't have shown which spell hit her.
Okay.
Because all of them were casting so many spells, and spells were rebounding, and things were going off. And Aberforth says he's like, I could have shot the spell for all I know. No one knows who cast it. But Ariana's lying dead. Albus is, at some point, Aberforth does say that Albus was trying to kind of calm it down and trying to not let it escalate, but obviously did not happen. And Grindelwald realizes, hey, with all of my other track record, another dead person is going to look real bad. I need to go. So Grindelwald bounces. Aberforth and Albus then have to bury their sister. And as we've been told by the Alpheus Dodge story, they get into a fight at the funeral. They don't speak since. So Aberforth is trying to tell this to Harry to be like, are you sure this is the person you want to follow? Like, this person who thought his sister was completely dispensable, you are not any more indispensable to him than his sister. Like, are you sure this is what you want to do?
Yeah.
And they find out that Aberforth did have the other mirror. Aberforth was the one who sent Dobby to help.
So Aberforth bought it off of Mundungus.
Yep.
Like a year before.
And that's where we find out that Aberforth and Albus did have some sort of communication, because he says Albus told him how important that mirror was.
Yes.
So they have some sort of communication, but it's obviously not great. It's not like brotherly communication. It is, here's information you need to know type of communication.
And they know, I get the sense that Albus and Aberforth knew enough about each other and the things they were doing so that like they were aware. So like here, Aberforth is like, all right, I know what Albus was up to in Hogwarts. We find out, that the portrait of Ariana has been communicating
with
Hogwarts students. Aberforth is on the positive side. He's been helping the order, helping the students, through subterfuge and allowing things to kind of go in and out of Hogsmeade and Hogshead.
Yes.
And so, yeah, and at the end here, he ultimately agrees to help the kids.
Yeah, to help them get into Hogwarts. He doesn't agree with them.
No, he agrees to help them because he understands that they're like, oh well, this is our only chance. Like, he understands it is their only chance to help, and it is not just Harry. Like, it is more than that. And just to harken back, I don't think they said it, but the greater good.
Yes. Harry says, well, sometimes the greater good does require the sacrifices.
Okay, so he does, yeah.
He does point out. It's not the exact wording, but that's essentially what he says. And Aberforth is like, okay, so he sends Ariana down. He tells the portrait to go get him, and instead of moving to the side like most moving portraits do to get out of their frame, she walks backwards. She starts walking down the tunnel behind her. And that's when Hermione asks, is that your sister? And Aberforth's like, yes, that is Ariana. So she comes back with somebody else who they realize eventually is a very beat up Neville Longbottom.
In the portrait.
Yes, in the portrait. So he climbs out of the tunnel. It's definitely a bit of magic that they have never seen before.
Yeah, we haven't seen it before. Yes. But like, he comes back in the portrait, and then the wall that the portrait's on opens up, and Neville is there.
Yes.
It's interesting bit of magic there.
Yes. And Neville looks very worse for wear. They know that he has like deep contusions on his face. One of his eyes is swollen. His hair's really shaggy. Like, he's all beat up, but he's still Neville. He's like, oh no, this is nothing. It's not compared to what other people have had to go through. And he starts detailing as he's bringing them back through the portrait in the Hogshead. After telling Aberforth, hey, more people are coming, just so you know. And they're going to be operating directly into your tavern. So and Aberforth says something along the lines of like, I'm not a train station or something. Like, but Neville's just like, nah, you're gonna help us. And he keeps walking back through the portrait. And he's updating them on the torture that has been happening at Hogwarts, the Carrow's preferred form of disciplines.
Now, do you think this is it possible that this kind of tunnel and the Hogshead kind of harken maybe to, I don't know, I was gonna say the Underground Railroad.
I mean, it could be that. It could be other. I mean, we have to remember the author is not American.
Right.
And so that's probably not what she was thinking. It is very similar, but it's we make so many references, and a lot of it does echo with Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, World War II. It is probably based off of ways that they used to smuggle people and smuggle information and supplies through and around enemy territory. They would have one person on the enemy side who would be brave enough to try to get things to them or try to smuggle people out. So it's probably more of a callback to that.
Okay.
So they get through the portrait. Neville's updating them about the detentions that are being given out and how he got as cut up as he was. And
They still don't trust Filch. Filch is just like the ultimate I was told to do it person.
yes, Filch is so determined to be part of the magical world as a squib that he will do whatever the person in power says to do to stay there.
He needs to go.
Filch is kind of terrible, but he's also very sad.
Yeah, he is very sad, but he's just, oh, I was just doing what I was told to do.
Yes, but he is a very sad person. I don't feel bad for him, but you're just looking at me, you're like, oh, honey. But so
Well,
they get
it's
through.
funny. It's funny
Oh.
that the same actor played him and played
Walder Frey.
yeah, Walder Frey. Because Walder Frey's sad. I don't feel for him,
Nope.
but he's a sad, sad character.
And that's the thing is that the actor's a very good actor. He plays these characters very well, but these characters are not great characters.
No, no.
But they have significant impact on the stories that they're telling.
Absolutely.
So Neville tells them pretty much that after one of their last escapades, he realized that they went after his grandmother. Not and the Death Eaters didn't realize that his grandmother would fight back, and got out of there and wrote him a letter that says, "Keep going. I'm on the run. Let's do this."
I love Grant.
Yep. So Neville is hiding when we find out in the Room of Requirement because they were going to kill him, get rid of him, lock him up, do something. They pretty much said that he wasn't needed at Hogwarts anymore. So they go in and they get to the Room of Requirement, and it's full of people that have kind of been deemed undesirables at the school and are subject to like abuse and torture and just very kind of downtrodden at the school.
And we
they do
learn,
notice that there's no Slytherins there.
yeah, there are no Slytherins there. And we learn that Neville has spent probably 60 hours decorating and customizing the Room of Requirement.
Yes.
Like, if you were to spend 60 hours in Hogwarts Legacy, you could just really do whatever you wanted in the Room of Requirement. And that's what Neville did here.
Yeah, Neville, it is. See, and that's another thing of he says that when he was running from the Carrows, he knew he had one chance to get away, and that was to get into the Room of Requirement. And Neville's also the one who finds the Room of Requirement in the 5th book. So the Room of Requirement really and Neville really have a strong bond throughout this series. But so Harry's in there, and Neville starts alerting people through the galleons that they had made in the 5th year of, hey, Harry's here, we're gonna fight, get to Hogwarts. And Harry's like, no, we're not fighting. What are you talking about? We're not, like, we're just trying to find this item. And everyone's like, nah, we're fighting. You showed up here, we're fighting.
Yeah, like why else would you show up here? They're like, no, like we need to find this object.
Yes. So Fred and George show up, Ginny shows up, Lupin shows up, and eventually Harry's like, eventually they wear him down and they're like, you got to tell us what's going on. We can help you. We're here to fight. We're here to help.
And it's not just them. I mean, they wore him down, and then he remembered, like he remembered Aberforth's words about Dumbledore keeping secrets and lies.
Yes.
And then he's like, he did, and it hasn't helped much. But maybe and I think he's like, the secrets and lies got, Sirius killed, and other things happen. So like, maybe I'll trust, and maybe that's what it came down to, right? Maybe that was Dumbledore's tragic flaw, is he at some point, maybe with Grindelwald, lost trust and said, I can't trust anybody, but I have to move these pieces. And he's very cautious of who he told or who he gave missions to.
Yes. And it also just goes for that Dumbledore was very manipulative.
He was. And it's also weird because we hear Dumbledore say all the time, I trust so and so. I trust Snape. So if it was trust,
we find out
weird.
why he trusts Snape. We find out why, and it's not for a good reason either. But
no,
we find out in the next section of chapters for next week, but it's not a good reason either. I don't like Dumbledore. But no, it's the same point. So Harry's realizing keeping the secret has not gotten us anywhere. It's in a location that's unfindable. We would never find it in enough time. He knows that the clock is ticking down. Voldemort's on his way. He doesn't know where to start looking in a massive castle for one object that could have belonged to Ravenclaw. And he's like, you're right, I gotta ask for help. So eventually he says that he's looking for something that would have belonged to Ravenclaw, probably small, something she could have kept on her person. And eventually Cho, I believe, pipes up with, well, what about her? I mean, there's Ravenclaw's diadem, but it's been lost for centuries. And Harry's like, well, what does it look like? And they're like, well, I mean, there's a statue in the Ravenclaw common room with her wearing it.
And Cho
volunteers to bring
like,
her.
I'll take you, Harry.
And Jenny's like, nope, Luna's going.
Luna's gonna take him. Right, Luna? And she's like, oh, yes.
So Luna and Harry go to the Ravenclaw common room, get in there. He looks and he sees what the diadem is supposed to look like. And then they turn around and there is one of the Carrows. I believe it's Electo Carrow.
Yes, Electo is there, and Luna's stunned. Like after some words that she gives, Luna does stun her.
Yes, so she's knocked out, and then Amicus is banging on the door to try to be let in. The other students come down and realize that Harry Potter's here. This Death Eater is knocked out. Another one's knocking at our door. This is not a great situation.
No.
And then we hear McGonagall outside of the portrait, or outside of the door. And McGonagall's like, why do you need to be let in? You made Flitwick let your sister in earlier. Why can't she let you in?
And so before Electo got stunned, though, she did finger the dark mark.
She did call. And so Amicus is like, if you don't have Potter and you called, we're all gonna die. And he's trying to be like, well, we'll blame it on the kids. We'll say the kids captured her and made her press it, or like we'll blame it on the kids. And McGonagall's like, no. And so eventually McGonagall answers the riddle and lets him in. And then they stun him too.
Yeah. Speaking of the riddles, it was funny where it asked the question and Harry's like, well, how do you get in? And is there a password or whatever? And Luna's like, no, you just got to answer the question. He's like, oh, and what happens if you get it wrong? It's like, well, then you got to wait for somebody that knows the answer to come along. It's like, oh,
We don't
well,
have time for that.
and she goes, oh, well, okay, well, I would say it's this. And then the door opens and he's like, Luna, come on, snap out of it. Come on.
But so they eventually, then Amicus gets stunned. McGonagall's like, Harry, why are you here? What are you doing? And so he sort of tells her that they need to search for something and Voldemort's on the way and they need to protect the school. They need to get the students out. And McGonagall, when she doesn't question him, she's like, all right, let's go. And they run into the other heads of the household, or heads of houses, and they explain what they're going to do. And then Snape appears and they all attack Snape. And they're like, you're done. We're done with you. The Carrows are gone. We're not dealing with you two anymore. And Snape flies out of the window and flies off into the night with the powers he has picked up from Voldemort. So
yeah, he looks like a bat. Yeah.
Yes. And so he flies away, and McGonagall is telling Professor Sprout, Professor Flitwick, Professor Slughorn to get their students down to the Great Hall so they can start trying to evacuate them, and that the other teachers need to start help putting up protection for the school. And so Flitwick sits there, he's by the open window, he just starts going off and shouting off enchantments to protect the school, and McGonagall's throwing a bunch out. And then Harry interrupts Flitwick and is like, hey, do you know where the lost diadem is? He's like, no, I do not. It's been lost for centuries. Go away.
So I don't know remember if you mentioned it, but it was funny. McGonagall told Professor Slughorn, it's like, hey, look, it's time for the Slytherins to pick a side in this.
Yeah.
And
yes, it is. And there's a theory that, because McGonagall does say that she believes that if any student is 17 or older and they want to fight, they should be given the opportunity to, but that everyone else needs to be sent home. And they're going to they talk about using the passageway to the Hogshead, because if all the Death Eaters are at Hogwarts, they're not going to care who's in Hogsmeade. So they're talking about sending all the students out through there and getting them out. But in a way, there is a theory that McGonagall sends all the Slytherins out so that they don't have to fight their parents. So they don't have to really pick a side and either fight their parents or watch their parents die.
I could see that. I never thought about that.
So McGonagall has this throughout all the books and even throughout the movies, she has this very kind of English and Scottish sense of compassion, of that you look deeper at her actions and you're like, oh, that was actually really nice. But she's like, don't talk about it. We're not talking about that. Like, she has this kind of very stiff upper lip, proper sense of compassion.
Yeah. And while all that's happening, like while they're fighting Snape, Harry's seeing Voldemort as well.
Yes.
And I don't know if you mentioned that. So
Well, no,
I was looking at something on my phone whenever.
Yes.
So
no, Harry realizes that Voldemort realizes that the Horcrux is gone from both the cabin and the lake, and that he needs to get to Hogwarts. So Harry knows Voldemort is coming. He is going to be here ASAP. Like, we need to get protections around the school. We need to get people out. I need to find whatever this thing is that Ravenclaw had.
And at the end of this chapter, and we get Percy show up.
Yes. So they go back to the room of requirement, and there's a lot more people there, including Percy stumbles through the door. And the conversation that they have supports what I said in the last episode, where Percy did not give his real name to the Ministry. He did not claim to be a Weasley. He created this different name for himself to not be associated with them. Because he comes through and he's apologizing for abandoning the family and for not being proud to be a Weasley. And so that he never explicitly states that that's what he did, but that does support that theory that he did not want to be associated with the Weasleys and took a different name at the Ministry.
Yeah, makes sense. And then also at the end, like Ginny's, so McGonagall's trying to send Ginny away as well, but she wants to stay and fight, and they kind of agree.
They agree to let her stay, but they tell her to stay in the room of requirement.
Right.
Which y'all had to know that wasn't going to work.
No.
Book Ginny is way too headstrong for that.
Yeah. And then the very end of the chapter, Harry sees through Voldemort's eyes that he's entering the gates of Hogwarts with Nagini draped over his shoulders.
Yes. And
so,
then
I mean, this is it's stated he was possessed of that cold, cruel sense of purpose that preceded murder. So Voldemort is livid.
He is there to murder, and that is all he's there for.
Children. He's there to murder children.
Well, yes, he is the big bad. He is Voldemort. He kills indiscriminately, as we have already seen. It is not a reach for us to believe that he's just going to go in there and slaughter a bunch of kids.
No. So, any more thoughts on this section?
Dumbledore's terrible. There are so many plot holes that anger me. Things were moved very quickly in these 10 chapters. Like, there wasn't a lot of downtime like there was in the previous ones. That things moved very quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it will continue to move quickly. The last 6 chapters are also packed with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that because, like I said, I forgot a lot of stuff. So that I'm here for the ride of remembrance.
Yep.
So, hey, look, 2 hours and 8 minutes.
Hey, it's pretty good for us.
No, I really enjoy you on here. Your extra knowledge. You're just like a wiki for Harry Potter. So anybody that's listening, and me as well, it's just like, it's cool. It's got a different these episodes have had, kind of a different tone, and not to say anybody on here has been bad or tone deaf, or not tone deaf, but it's just everybody has their unique way of talking about it, and you bring some extra knowledge, and I think it works well having you on for book 7, because there's more that you can bring and talk on here about without spoiling much, because you have the other 6 books to talk about. So
yes, it's not like I'm having to be like, okay, I'm only on book 5, I can't reveal what happens in these books or what I know about these characters, but Yeah, now I just get to say all of my little theories and
it's hard to do. And it'll be interesting, Justin and I getting into the Stormlight archives, because we've both read the majority of them. And so, but those are like 1,000-page tomes each. So, but it'll be interesting getting into that and kind of remembering, but not like halfway remembering. Go, is this what happened in it coming up? But it's fun listening to people talk about books that they haven't read before as well, and them making up predictions and seeing, knowing you've read the books before and they come up with a prediction and just go, so. But that's something I miss, like from rereading. But it's fun to reread and talk about books as well. So.
Oh wait, there's one thing that I forgot to mention. We do find out in the chapter, the Wand Maker, Harry hands Ollivander the wands. And remember, I was speaking in the first episode sort of about wand lore and how the different cores can kind of translate to how their wizard's magic works. We find out in the Wand Maker that Draco actually has a hawthorn wand with a unicorn tail core, which sort of does tell us that Draco doesn't really want to be dark.
Right.
He is pompous,
that too.
he's a git, but he's not, he doesn't want to be dark. His magic doesn't want to lean that way. But also, hawthorn is a very particular wood. And it's one of those ones where like it grows stronger after its flowers die off. So it's kind of theorized that Draco Malfoy kind of is going to come into himself more after Dumbledore's death, because of like his wand is sort of telling him that like he's more of a pure soul, he doesn't really want to be doing this, and he's going to have sort of this blossom after death type of vibe. So it's kind of a cool little tidbit that they worked into there.
I like that.
I like Draco as a character. I am pro Draco. I know that a lot of people are like, well, he made his decisions. I'm like, he's a child. He couldn't make those decisions.
Yep.
So I just thought it was kind of an interesting tidbit.
All right. Yeah, I like that. I'm glad you brought that back up. So, yeah, I think this section, speaking of wands, and last thoughts here, I think this section actually was the first time wand lore was actually written in the books.
Yes.
It was like, okay.
Beyond the traditional, the wand chooses the wizard.
Right. But the actual word wand lore, like
Yes.
it was written in this section. And I was like, why did it take 6.5 books to write
For us to get the
wand
word
lore?
wand lore.
So, all right. So if you made it this far, go ahead, like, subscribe, share, do all those things. It's fun. I like listening to podcasts. Other people like listening to podcasts. I like talking about books. So do that. It helps us out. Visit the sponsor, Mudcat Whiskers. Use code Paperweight at checkout to save yourself some money. And we will see you back next week for the final 6 chapters and the conclusion of the entire Harry Potter series. So, all right. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.